Welcome back to Death Care Collective, a show where I get to have conversations with cemetery operators, funeral directors, and thought leaders in the death care industry. I'm Keith Page. I'm a hospice chaplain, a funeral celebrant, and a death doula, and I'm the host of the show. My guest today is DiOrio. In is also a funeral celebrant and hospice chaplain. He's an entrepreneur and a spiritual leader. We have a great conversation. We really get into all of this work that we do around the death industry, and I really hope you enjoy the show. DiOrio, hey buddy, thanks for joining me on our podcast.
Yeah, Keith, it's great to be with you, my brother. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah. Full disclosure, In and I have been friends. How many years? How far back do we go, dude?
18, 20, I don't know. I mean, we've been in the same orbit for quite a long
Yeah,
time.
so fun. I think I heard of you before I met you. Probably
Yeah,
likewise.
same thing.
Figure. And then I got to meet you, and just you are an easy guy to like, and I appreciate you doing this for me or with me.
Yeah, it's my honor, and you've been obviously a friend and a mentor of mine for a long time, close, and now from a distance in Tennessee. So grateful to have the
Yep,
time.
totally. All right, so get us started into this industry you're in.
Yeah.
I call it the death industry, but give us how did you at a young age find yourself in this industry? What's the road?
Yeah, well, I'm grateful that I'm still young. You know, at 44, I don't know, I'll be pushing 50 in 5 years. So my wife's like, I don't know how young you are, but we'll see. We'll see about
Right,
that.
you're married young, so you
But
got to
I'm
stay young,
grateful.
brother.
um, you and I have a similar background in some ways, Keith. In fact, our stories cross over at some critical points. But I was a pastor for many years, so I began dealing with caring for people from kind of a spiritual care perspective within kind of a congregational perspective. That's a long story of how I evolved, changed perspective, moved outside of that kind of box of kind of traditional kind of evangelical Christianity or whatever. But
Yeah,
but the reality is that gave the first taste of doing hospital visits, caring for people who were getting diagnoses of terminal illness. And I was preaching as a 21-year-old man to thousands of people, which meant I had lots of people thinking I knew things I didn't and had
right.
knowledge I didn't and experience I didn't
Yeah,
coming to me and asking me for wisdom. How do we deal with this? And often with a spiritual, kind of component to it. Okay, so what do we do with a 44-year-old girl with cancer or a child that's died, or how do we just deal with the fragility of life, right? And
yeah,
so I kind of began my career studying theology and pastoral studies and divinity and ministry and did all the degrees, and then I went through my own personal challenges in 2017. I went through a divorce, and I was a pastor of a church, and I realized when you go through a crisis as a spiritual leader, not too many people are there for you. They're
yeah.
there with their hands out to receive, but they're not there with their hands out to give very often. And
Right. They don't
so,
even know how. Right. It's like they don't know what to do.
right, yeah, you're the leader. You're Santa Claus.
Right.
You
The
got to make it
hero has
happen.
fallen. Oh my God.
Yeah. And so I had that experience, and then I had to figure out, well, what do I do? And at that point I had a bachelor's in biblical studies, a master of divinity, a doctorate of ministry and theology. So there's not too many like Fortune 500 companies that are calling up theologians and pastors
Right.
to like lead their charge.
Right.
So I found in a really good, blessed kind of finding. I don't mean it in like kind of like I had to do this, but the world of hospice and palliative care,
Mm,
and as a clinical spiritual counselor, and that's part of the work I do. I'm a clinical spiritual counselor today. I do funerals, as you're very familiar with, working with different
yeah. We're
mortuaries
gonna we're gonna talk about that. Yeah.
yeah, serving families. And but my background in education really is primarily in like philosophy, theology, spiritual care, but then I have a master's in health administration as well from Louisiana State that helps me kind of understand
Mm,
the business of healthcare, the organizational structures needed, and
yeah.
kind of what's out there in terms of the healthcare landscape. And yeah, so it's a little bit about me. I'm a clinical
Yeah.
chaplain. I've led as an administrator within different organizations. I've worked for Kaiser, Silverado, small mom and pop, larger organizations, all that.
Well, wow. That's great. What a bunch of degrees and then a bunch of cool experiences. So you are I think obviously already well traveled and have a lot to say. So
Yes.
I'm thrilled about that. Because you got started young. Like I meet a lot of chaplains, and sometimes not always, but it's pastor for many years. Then at 60, 50s, 60s, retire pastor, and then kind of go into chaplaincy or college ministry kind of stuff. Then hospital chaplaincy, hospice. But you got into it young. Do you think it brings a different opportunity challenge for you being having got started younger than some of us older dogs? And what do you think that's like?
Ye- Yeah, I think a couple. One, you're always treated differently when you come in the room, right? Because when I show up in the room, and as you mentioned, they're probably expecting somebody who's 70 years old, who's been a senior pastor or a ministry leader of some kind for years, and they're making their rounds. So I'm a
Yeah,
high energy, fairly young for the profession. So I come in,
yeah,
one, I think it advantages me in the lives of people because it gives some context that, well, there's somebody who on the younger side is studying this stuff,
yep,
experienced in this, and it's just not a second job for them. It's not the leftover retirement role.
right,
Not
right.
saying that that's a bad
No,
thing, right?
no, that's right. It's just that we do see that a lot, so that's worth noting. So
Big
yeah,
time. But I would
yeah,
say, I would say professionally and personally. Professionally, it gives me the ability to connect with all layers of the family. Like I
mm,
find that I'm able to connect with the teenage kids in the home, or the college age kids, or the younger families. That they kind of look at me like, oh, that guy's kind of cool, I guess, or younger, and
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
able to kind of connect with them. Professionally, it's just that's been a benefit. Personally, it's just been helpful to me, like as a younger person dealing with sickness, death, and dying.
mm,
And even though I'm still middle age, it's like I hopefully have a lot of life left. But my mind and my heart is very sober when it comes to
yeah,
life.
right,
And you and I bury a lot of people, and we see a lot of very
yeah,
difficult, hard situations that kind of go against the grid of what should happen in
yeah,
life, whatever that should is. And
right.
so, personally, I think it's deepened me. It's given me empathy and
Mm.
compassion, and a greater capacity just to see that we're all in this fight together.
Yeah. Yeah. I describe it sometimes as I walk through, I mean, I've lived through my own grief, right? Both parents have died, also divorce, also lots of, hopefully some ego death, but a lot of career death, pastor death, all those things, right? Religious death. And I say I walk through life now with another set of lenses called, grief and loss. And it
Yep.
doesn't mean I have them on all the time, but man, does that bring context, not just to the families I serve, but to my everyday life, right? Whether it's relating to my daughters, my friends, this moment, talking with you today, like all of that, I think all of those experiences shape like every breath, it feels like. Do you get
Yeah.
this? Is that part of what you're
Oh,
saying?
yeah, and even like
Yeah.
the little stuff that pisses people off and makes everybody so upset, and they're just so raging, and I'm just like, I don't need, I forgot the thing yesterday that people were so upset about, and I'm not really concerned about anything tomorrow that people are. To me, it's like that's when you're dealing with people who are like, literally on their last minutes of life, days, kind of, and then you don't get the thing that you wanted, or you get an extra bill, or the parking spot wasn't great, or whatever issue, you're kind of like, you
Yeah.
know you've seen
Yeah.
those shirts, did you die or whatever, and I, not to be
Right. And then you die. Right.
morbid, it's like that it's kind of true. And so two things. One, it gives me empathy for those who are suffering, and I'll just be really
Mhm.
honest, it gives me a lot of frustration for those who are just caught up in the trivial, because I'm just like, man, you're going to be so shocked, you're going to be so disrupted by life,
Yeah.
like the
That's true.
just
Yeah.
pleasure, 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 until life
Right. Right.
happens.
So that's my next question, right? We live in and we talk about when we hang out, right? The death-phobic culture that is kind of for sure the U.S. and maybe
Yeah.
Western society. What's that going to cost us? What is that costing us as a culture? What are you seeing? And why are all of our heads literally in the sand when it comes to death and this loss, this end of life?
Yeah, well, it's been a phenomenon for a long time. In 1973, Ernst Becker wrote a book called The Denial of Death. He won the Pulitzer Prize
Bestseller.
for
Yeah.
that posthumously. He actually died close to the completion of that book, or after the completion. And basically, what he talks about, and there's a whole school of psychological thought called terror management theory that arises out of this, which is
Mhm.
basically our fundament, we all know death is like there in the peripheral.
Yeah.
And basically, we spend every day of our life trying to avoid it, right? So, another way to say, when you see the woman who's getting this implanted and this, this cut and well, what is she
Fucked
really?
out. This, right.
Is it death? Maybe it's or you
Yeah.
see the guy driving the Ferrari and like he's rocking it out. And he's trying to be young forever. It's like maybe he's just denying the fact that death is
Yeah.
part of the reality of life. So I would say for me, I've been filled with gratitude a little bit from it
Mm.
because I am in touch with the reality that most people are trying not to be in touch with.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
makes me kind of very grateful for the blessings of my life, the fact that I do have relationships that are intact and
Mm.
healthy. But I also makes me realize that's not forever in any situation, right? And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that these are all temporary attachments, historic attachments that are part of time, and
Mm.
time wins everything. you know
Absolutely. Yeah.
time's gonna beat us all. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so I would say in our culture, um, what's interesting is I think we're a whole culture now of people who are trying to fix death. They see death as a problem to be solved.
Yeah.
You have that guy Brian Johnson who's trying to live forever, and you have all these,
Right. Yeah. All
So
the life
my sense
hacks
is,
stuff.
as a
Right.
culture, we still aren't confronting it.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, no,
Yeah.
we're gonna fix this, and then we'll get back to the beach.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that just to me is like crazy.
No.
Like it's just
Yeah.
not
It's
even
another
a,
round. Yeah.
yeah. And even if we did solve the problem of like death, I mean, like illness, we don't solve the problem of fragility, like accidents and life.
Right.
And
Right.
so,
And other kinds of losses, bro.
oh
Right.
yeah,
All the
yeah,
other kinds of losses that go along, not just the physical end of life, right? Like
yeah.
everything can be an opportunity. It's part of the curriculum of learning to live with loss and navigate it. But I feel like we just can shove it all under the carpet and ignore the elephant under the rug, literally.
Yeah, I think you're 100%. And I think that's why, counseling and mental health and the phenomenon of people seeking resources and positive psychology, all of that stuff's really helpful. But in the face of death, in the face of like, we
Right.
need a different set of skills. We need a different set of tools because, like in hospice care, we're not curative. We're comfort. It's a different
Yes.
set of tools. It's like we're not
All
fixing this
completely.
problem. This is
Right. Yeah.
and so I think that's very much the similar thing in life. It's like when it comes to death, this is the tension to manage. It's not a problem to solve. And even if we fixed it, I think that would create a whole set of other problems too, and
Right.
philosophical
Right.
puzzles, right? But
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to ever get there. I do
Yeah.
think that none of us are getting out of life alive.
Right.
So
Right.
we got to figure that one out.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I was thinking about how we insulate, right? You're talking about the Ferrari or the plastic surgery or money or busyness or looking great, right? Any of it uh, is just insulation from the reality of the rawness of that which is right in front of us, is that this will end, right?
Yeah.
And living as a finite being. I do this thing called Death Cafe. It just scares the
Yeah.
shit out of people, even when I say the title of it, right? But people
Yeah.
come in, or first people are afraid of it, like, what the hell is it? What's a Death Cafe? But those who come, what I find is they are relieved to have a safe place to just talk about the fact that we're finite. And
Yeah.
because they've even said, we have kids in their 20s that come and they go, yeah, I can't even talk about it with my family because they think I'm weird. They think I'm just into goth, right? But they're just having like this existential challenge already about what's the meaning of all this, and they've kind of like the lenses are off. They know that life comes to an end, and they don't know who to talk to, so they
Yeah.
come and actually find freedom and some
Yeah.
relief and community to talk about that we're finite, that this is going to end. So if that's the truth, then the bigger question is, how should we live, right?
Well, I think you're right, and I think we can't actually answer that question unless we see that life is finite. Like if you're
Right,
telling
right.
yourself this story, a religious story or a capitalist story or a technological story or a scientific story, that this issue of fragility and death is going to be solved,
Yeah,
you could put it out there, and
for
then
sure.
the problem is, when it comes, it's gonna come to you no matter. I mean, you and I could lock ourselves in a room, cover ourselves in, bubble wrap,
Right. Yep.
have food delivered to the house, medicine come to the house, doctors come to the
Yep.
house, and eventually they're gonna take our dead body out of that house. I mean, it doesn't,
Yeah.
just life, so I think for
Right.
me, acknowledging the fragility of life kind of
Yeah.
one it puts me in a place of compassion with all other living beings, because I think
Yes.
this is not just something that humans are experience. Any sentient conscious living
Absolutely,
being
bro.
experiences
Yep.
the arc and death of life.
Sure
So I'm
enough.
part of this experience also, but also one of the things I like about it, I know it's sad as you like about death, is I really it gives me the I don't give a shit button to push, like
Yeah.
when
Right.
life is really like it's like, oh, that person thinks you're stupid, or they don't like you, or they said something. It's like 100 years from now, we're all gonna be dead. Who cares? Like, who
Yeah. Right.
cares?
That's right.
Like,
Yeah.
what are we stressing out about right now? And yeah, gives me compassion, and
Yeah.
confronts my own ideologies.
Yeah. For sure. Well, so yeah, so we're talking about death and dying, and one of the things you mentioned that I was going to highlight too is you and I are also funeral celebrants. Some people don't even know what
Yes.
a celebrant is, how a celebrant is different than officiant. I'll let you. I mean, I could talk
Yep.
about this for hours, but I'll let you talk about it since you're one also. What is a funeral celebrant? How's it different from just maybe a regular officiant? And then what is it we're
Yeah.
trying to do? What is it we're trying to do for families? It's maybe a little
I
different.
think it's a great question, and I think within the world of funerals or celebration of life services, things like that. Typically for years, those were services done by religious traditions. And
Yeah,
so, if you were Jewish, your rabbi did your wedding and funeral. If you were Catholic, your priest did. If you're Buddhist, your monk did, right? And you
exactly.
go, evangelical, your pastor did, right? And well, we've lived in a destruction and deconstruction of a religious Christian society, especially in America. And so
Yeah,
people, when it comes to like weddings and funerals and things like that, they don't have the traditional resource often of, well, oh, that's our family priest, or that's our family rabbi, or that's our family pastor, but they still have the need
right.
of somebody to lead mom's service or funeral.
Yeah,
And so there's a whole field of us, and you're part of that, and you help me in this, is called celebrants, where we really play a neutral role rather than a denominational or theologically oriented role. We
yeah,
work with the family as a master of ceremonies, as a storyteller, as a
yes,
master narrative crafter, to
yep,
help shape that service. And we lead the service, and that can include speaking, it can include inviting guests to speak, sharing words of wisdom, poems, scriptures if appropriate,
yeah,
prayers even if appropriate. It's the agenda is set by the family rather than by the person or officiant leading it. I think that'd be a
right.
big distinction. I mean, what would you say? Would you think that's okay?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we throw the script away, right? Because usually as clergy, we have the plug and play, insert name here, right?
Yes.
Say the verses, do the right. Here's where the prayers go, and we throw the script away. We show up ahead of time, days before, a week before, 2 weeks before, meet with the family over the phone, Zoom, in person, sit in their living room, and fall in love with them telling us the story of their loved one.
Yep.
And then we leave there and say, wow, I just got an earful, a heart full of good stuff. Not always great, not always beautiful. I mean, hard stuff too, right? That's the beauty of life. And now
Yeah.
I get to go craft it, right? And I've talked with them already. Are they some of them going to speak and tell the story? Do they want me to tell it? Do they want me to do the life story, and then they're going to add the color commentary afterwards? They're going to get up and share tidbits of what dad, mom meant to them. But I'm kind of like you said,
Yep.
chief narrator. And then we become the holders of that space. Whether there's 10 people there or 1,000
Yep.
people there, we hold the space and we invite everybody into this human experience. We set the table and say, we're going to eat well today, right? We are going to just enjoy
Yes.
this beautiful meal as we commune over this person's life.
I think it's so beautifully said, Keith. And I
Yeah,
think, one of the benefits of it is to be that kind of neutral space for people. It
yeah,
allows people to really grieve, because I think often if you
yeah,
come with an agenda, people get locked up, or if it has to
yeah,
be done a certain way, they get kind of
right,
locked up. And
yeah,
when you're like, hey, this is about you guys. I mean, I've had so many funny ones. Like one story, this guy was a young guy, unfortunately. It was kind of a sad death, but
Yeah.
drugs involved and one of those. So, you're given a situation where it's a difficult story, right? But the
Yeah.
mom was a hoot, and she comes up and she says, "I need you to read the eulogy as exactly as I wrote it. Don't." And she's like, "There's gonna be a part in there you're not gonna want to read." And I go, "What do you mean by that?" She pointed out.
That
Long
got
story
your
short, she
attention.
said, she goes, every year we took him to his favorite restaurant, Hooters. Yeah,
You're like,
and
I'm happy to read that, right?
yeah, that's great.
Very
And
good.
for me, being the celebrant, right? Well, I can you imagine if that was a priest
There you
or
go.
in that position or a
Right.
pastor or
Yeah.
like they would have felt maybe like, ooh, we got to keep that part of his life out,
Yep.
And for I think
Yep.
the celebrant, we don't come with any type of moral or prescriptive agenda. We're like, hey, let it all flow, let it all come out in
Right.
terms of
Yeah.
the uniqueness of the person, and sometimes that's funny and ugly and good and beautiful and everything in between, right?
Yeah.
It's life.
Yeah. And like you said, it really is the launching pad. This, I find, the celebration of life, and even the experience with the family that I'm with in their house leading up to it, becomes the launch pad for their journey of grief. Kind of after that, because they're in
Yeah,
shock. They got stuff to do that, and kind of that's like good busy stuff for the moment when a death first occurs. But then if we've done that well and we've set it up to humanize the person, told their good, bad,
yes,
whatever the families wanted, launched it well, they've had opportunities to express, whether that's in writing, them getting up and speaking, or just the family interview and us speaking on their behalf at the service. Then at the end, whatever our sort of ceremony of release of that person in memory,
yeah,
eternity, dirt, and I let the family even do that, right? I always say, where do you believe your loved one is spiritually, or and then and one person said he loved libraries. Can we release him to the great library in the sky? I go, of course. I've had
that's
golf
awesome.
families say, how about the 19th hole? I'm like, absolutely. Like, I said, whatever's going to bring comfort to you guys, it's your story to hold on to and your
Yeah.
memory. And the more we do it in a way that fits you guys in your language, that's going to lead you better into your journey of grief.
And this isn't an area. Yeah, you're so right, Keith. And I think within we're walking into kind of no man's land, and so we're trying to, in terms
Totally.
of death and dying, and we're
Oh,
we're trying to give, and the religious traditions have been helpful to some point, but they've been restrictive at other points,
yeah.
and so we're living in a culture where we're like, we don't really know what to do with some of these like historic like things that are just part of life because the institutions that have helped us have shifted, right? Which
Yep.
means there's an opening for people like you and I just to be real humans with people. And that's the wonderful thing. Like I've done funerals literally, like I know you have, like I literally a couple weeks ago I was doing a service. The guy was, I don't want to speak too many details, but a top attorney in America. I'm talking,
Wow.
lived in a $20 million mansion in Newport Beach. His wife's the top attorney. As I'm getting ready to speak, Adam Schiff, the senator from California, walks in and sits in the second row. Okay. So I'm about to speak, and it's like there, I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna speak to a US sitting senator, right? And then another, so here's one service. Everyone in that room, probably politicians, lawyers, doctors, millionaires, rich people, right? That's one setting. Another
Right.
setting, 85-year-old Hispanic woman, poor, 18 grandkids, 19 grandkids, Question,
Yeah.
who knows how to deal with the loss better? But so is it the
Yeah.
person who
Right.
had all the lawyers and the senator at his funeral, or is the Hispanic grandma probably no education? And
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
answer is probably neither. Neither in the sense that we're not there. It's not like, oh well, this is how you deal with that, and there's
Right.
one
Right.
done, one
Right.
answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Every
One's
every
not more
culture is different.
prepared. Right. Yep. Every
No,
culture is
and
different. Right.
often in my experience, the more you have to distract you from the suffering of life in general, which money can help you with that, and
Yeah.
prosperity can help you with that,
Yep.
often the more angry you are or the more frustrated or limited you are to deal with the big losses. People
Yep.
who have dealt with suffering, or have limited resources or come from poverty or brokenness, they've probably dealt with a lot of death and suffering, and but
Absolutely.
so sometimes people who have had such blessed lives, they don't know what to do in the face of
Yeah.
this loss, you know?
It goes
It's
back to
hard.
that idea of they've been insulated from it all.
Yeah.
And the insulation, all of a sudden, if it's just ripped off like that, man, that's where people, like you said, they feel really lost and helpless. But people that have less insulation are learning how to be more human and real in those day to day losses. And I always say now, loss and grief and things not going as planned every day is my teacher. In fact, the lady that trained me in my death
Yeah.
doula training, she says all of this is learning and it's teaching us how to die. I was like, fuck, that's amazing, right? And so
Yeah.
right after I went through my death doula training, I took a team to India, and it's just like five. I take my homeboys, right? I took like four other guys, and we're sitting there, and I said, okay, when things don't go as planned on our trip to India, here's what we're gonna say. Hey, this is all just preparation for our dying. They look like deer in
Yeah.
headlights. What?
Right.
I said, this is all training for us. That it's not going to happen according to all of our plan, and we don't have control, right? It's an illusion. It's
Yeah.
insulating
Well,
ourselves to think we do.
yeah, well, it's interesting, there's this story from the Buddha, okay, and I'll tell you the story. It's one of my favorite little kind of funny stories, right? The Buddha is with some of his disciples, like you guys in India, you and your boys, right? The Buddha is with some of his disciples, and they were talking about how recently a great flood had come through the town and wiped out like so much of the livelihoods of people.
Yeah.
And they see this guy walking like, frantically, and he's like, "Gentlemen, have you seen my cows? Have you seen my cows? I lost all my sesame seed. I lost all my soy seed because of this flood. Now I can't find any of my cows. Have you seen my cows?" And they say, "No, sir, we haven't seen your cows." He says, "I think I'm just going to kill myself. I've lost my soy seed. I've lost my sesame seed. Now I can't find my cows. That's it. I'm just going to kill myself." And they said, "Well, maybe your cows are that way. If you look this way, maybe go look that way." He goes,
Yeah.
"Okay, I'll go look that way." And as soon as the man leaves, the Buddha looks to his friends. He's like, "Gentlemen, aren't you so happy that you don't have any cows to lose?"
There you go.
Meaning, this
Right.
this guy's
Yeah.
life was ready to be over, right?
Yep.
Because of these losses, and he was ready to give himself the ultimate loss because of minimal loss.
Yeah. Brilliant.
He wanted to
Well
take,
said. Yeah.
and I think for me, when you realize there's really only one loss in life, and
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
maximal loss
Yeah.
of the
Yeah. That's
death,
right.
your
Yeah.
death. Everything
Right.
else is lessons.
Yeah.
Everything
It
else
is.
is
It is.
just
It's
is a
preparation
cow.
for that.
It's
Right.
it's a
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
And so
Well,
I
you're,
that's been helpful for me to kind of just
yeah.
go,
Yeah. So you're this energizer bunny, man, when I'm with you. And how do you stay energized for the work?
it's interesting because I think just part of its nature, like I'm high energy, but I'm high positivity, but I have a real like dark side to me, like in the sense that like as a kid I loved Edgar Allan Poe and horror
Hmm.
movies and dark, and so it's kind of funny. I'm a bright person, but
Right.
I'm
You have that.
cool
Yeah.
with and I
Right.
grew up and I had some difficulties growing up, right? I mean, in terms of
Yeah.
losses of fathers and things like this, and so I went through some suffering, but I think that the love for the gifts of life and the belief that I'll still have more gifts to come,
Mm.
and I still even believe that in death,
Yeah.
that there'll be another gift to come,
Yeah.
helps me deal with the fact that the gifts are always being taken away. It's like life is always giving and always taking. And so I think if you see life as just taking and you build your life like a castle with a moat around it and I got to protect everything, then you might want to kill yourself because you lost your cows.
Right.
But if you realize like it's just a cow,
Yeah.
and I'm here
Right.
breathing and I'm still living.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not depressed or sad. And I've had some really sad services recently. I buried a 31-year-old mom of 5 kids from 13 to 2 months,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
leaving a 14-year-old to 2 months, and I'm walking with the dad daily. And so there's a
Yeah.
situation like that. There's
Yeah.
nothing, it's just difficult up and down. Okay.
Yeah.
But helping this family find the gifts of life and the fact that this young lady who passed away, her life is still going to give gifts, and that's true of our death, is that sometimes we're more alive to the people around us when we've died than we were when we were alive, because we can kind of take
Yeah.
each other for granted, and our voice can kind of be
Right.
muted, as like, oh, that's just grandpa. But when grandpa's gone, it's like, oh, what did grandpa say about that? What was grandpa's perspective on that? What was his view?
Yeah.
And so I would say I try to think of holistically. Also, I'm not the savior of anybody. I'm one person on the journey as well. I'm a sufferer as well. And I think it's because I've suffered and I realize
Mm.
there is no bachelor's degree in suffering with people. It's just something you have to
Right.
learn by
Yeah.
doing life with people,
Yeah.
and by the universe or God or mystery or whatever consciousness. I have a gift to be with people who are hurting, like you, Keith. And
Right.
I feel like it's one of those things, like I remember doing a service for a 36-year-old girl who died. Her husband discovered her because she had epilepsy and she choked on her own tongue. I mean, this is a very sad situation.
Yeah.
And there's 300 people at the service. And as I'm walking in to give the service, this older gentleman says to me, he's like, I don't envy you. Because I'm having to
Right. There you
go
go.
up,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but what I thought in that situation is, but you don't know how good I am. Like I'm so
Right.
good.
Right.
Like
Right.
I'm so good in this
You're like,
situation. I'm
challenge
gonna
accepted, Barrett.
yeah. And that family still reaches out to me. The aunt says you're a
Yeah.
gift from God 2 years later, and
Wow.
call out, and I don't take any of that stuff as, we're not
Yeah.
heroic, but I
No.
do feel I know you have this skill set. I know I have this skill set
Yeah.
of helping people through the shit storm of grief and loss, where it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like there's anything that could be clear, and just helping them see, like, the sun's going to rise tomorrow still,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we need you. This I've had close friends who've chosen to take themselves out of the game of life, you know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and I know you've experienced some of that too. And when
Yeah.
you've experienced that, and you just keep going, you're like, you know what? There are things to, even in the worst situation. I remember I was with a woman who was dying of cancer, and like 2 days before she died, she went to In-N-Out Burger, and I know you just got them out in Tennessee. Um, and I remember meeting her, like Dave. She goes, Ian, I took a bite of that In-N-Out and was like, it was heaven. It was the best thing I've ever, and I
Yeah.
realized, like, I mean, how many times have I just eaten In-N-Out, checking my email, run into for this woman,
Yeah.
that was, so I've tried to take that perspective, like to nourish and just to be like, oh, damn it, this In-N-Out's so good. This is like a heavenly burger, because
Yeah.
I realized, some people, that was their last burger. That was
Right.
their final
Right.
meal, and
We don't always know, right? We don't know when it's going to be the last. I was thinking about when you were describing her. I was like, wow, she's like the poster child for the word savor. All right, talk about she
yeah,
was knowing how to savor the moment, right? And I think when we
yes.
know time is more finite, maybe we don't only have 2 days left to live, but when we know life is finite, for me, it does help me savor every moment.
Oh yeah, I mean, I like you, I'm a father, and I have 4 kids, and I mean, I don't think there's a day in my kids' lives I don't text them, "I love you more than the whole wide world." Like, I could
Yeah,
just pour out, almost to the like a point of like maybe too much, maybe. But then I'm like, you know what? Damn it, I don't, I don't,
right.
I'm gonna err on the
Right.
side of
Yeah,
like giving life. I don't worry. It's when you like all the things, okay, like society is built for us to worry about certain things. Worry about
yeah,
your retirement, worry about the state of the economy, the political situation. Like when you realize like you were a finite being just passing through a temporary little bit of time, right?
yeah.
All the problems of the society in the world don't have to be yours. You don't have to
Mhm.
take on every damn anxiety of your era. I mean, because
Right.
you're just like, you know what? I'm just passing through.
Yeah, yeah,
Mike Tyson's one of my heroes. I want to meet him one day, and
yeah.
I'll
You probably
and
will.
there's
I
this,
hope I'm with you.
yeah, I mean, I hope I do. There's a special story there. When he ripped Holyfield's ear off, was
Right.
one of the last events I had with my dad before he left. And it was like I have this like memory of this event, then my dad being gone from my life after that. And so
Yeah.
I think of Mike Tyson like almost like a surrogate dad, you know. But when Mike Tyson was being interviewed by this one person, they said, how does it feel to be the greatest and the best in this? He's like, listen, I mean, I'm just passing through. I'll be dead one day, and no one's gonna remember
Wow.
my name. Maybe my kids will be
Wow.
sad when I'm gone. I mean, it was this really like sobering
Yeah.
response, and the interviewer didn't know how to deal with
Right.
it, basically because he just de-egoed the entire. and
Right.
and I kind of like that. I'm just passing through, and
Yeah.
I'm just trying to love and care for as many people who are passing through, passing on, as I can, and therefore, I'm
Yeah.
not stressed about every other problem.
So Mike Tyson, obviously boxer, you've got some podcasts. He's in the entertainment industry. You have background in the entertainment industry, passion for the
Do.
entertainment industry. Describe a little bit of where that comes from, and then does the entertainment industry and being a chaplain ever intersect? Where and how in your wild world of in DiOrio?
Yeah, I got a couple great stories there. So like and it's interesting, like I grew up in the entertainment industry. I'm a classically trained actor. My agent was Harry Gold from the time I was 4 till about 20.
Wow.
His daughter is Tracy Gold. She was on a TV show with Kirk Cameron. My brother was on a TV show with Don Rickles and Richard Lewis for 3 years called Daddy
Okay.
Dearest. And so
Okay.
I grew up in the entertainment industry, also having a brother getting on a TV show and just being so jealous that my face was green as but so I loved it. I kind of grew up in this competitive kind of both of us wanting to be actors, doing small
Yeah.
stuff here and there, and but really proud of my brother. And then as of recently, as like about a year and a half ago, I felt kind of an inclination to pick it up again, and through just a circuitous series of events. I hosted a show called the Best of LA Awards. I work for a guy named Michael Levine, who was Michael Jackson's agent, Barbara Streisand's agent, George Carlin's agent.
Wow.
He has the record of representing more Academy Award winners, Emmy winners, New York Times bestsellers than any other PR agent in the history of the world. And so he's kind of a famous figure in the world of Hollywood PR and entertainment. So I do video segments with him and trying to get back into acting. And you've said, how did those kind of intersect?
Right.
One, I go to these like hoity-toity Hollywood events where I'm shaking the hands with the owners of all these big things, and they go, "Oh, what do you do?" And I always like to joke around, "Oh, I do hospice." Okay. Because like I'm in this weird like Hollywood swanky environment,
Right.
but then I'm always,
Right.
but because
Yeah.
but I got a call. This was probably about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago. On a young, fragile, sweet little voice saying, "Hi, someone gave me your name. We had a friend die, and I will see if you can do the funeral." And I'll just real long story short. The girl who died was a famous up and coming DJ and producer. She had a song with Madonna, had a song with
Mm.
Marshmello, um, and she died at 29 of an overdose. The girl
Wow.
who called me and booked me is playing Coachella next year. She's one of the biggest. She's top 60 DJs in the world,
Wow.
and I have a background as a DJ and producer as well. And so it was kind of crazy because they're calling me to do this service right as the chaplain, as the celebrant, as the caring officiant. But I dropped out of high school to be a rave DJ. Now I'm in a room with 250 underground rave DJ producers,
Dude.
DJ. And as soon as I'm getting ready to start, Keith Madonna walks in, is in the very back.
What?
Yeah,
Oh
it's at
yeah.
this place. Yeah, a place called Icon Collective in Burbank. And so I literally was like, what the hell do I say? And this like I have an opportunity like in any of these situations, I'm nobody. I don't think of myself as anything special or anything significant, right? I'm just passing through, like I said. But here I
Right.
am in this situation where it's like I gotta or that's some shift or that's and what I realize is um if you said to everybody in that service, not hey, give a memory about the person, but hey, give a message to these people who are hurting in the face of this loss.
Yeah.
Not too many people are going to know what to do or step up, right?
Right. Right.
And but thank goodness you and I have that skill set of
Yeah.
both being good communicators, but also know the counseling perspective and dealing with death and dying. And I was able to really help. I think in that situation, and it was
Wow.
really cute because at the end of the service, it was like a rave. I mean, they had DJs and people coming. In the
Heck
end,
yeah.
my friend Leah comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, I don't know how to end the service." And so and we didn't pray or anything,
Right.
but I just had everybody put their hands out in front of them, right?
Yeah.
And I said, guys, every day I want you to imagine like life is being deposited in our hands, and we get the opportunity to enjoy it or toss it away,
Wow.
and to waste it or to envelop it, to treasure it, and I get today we're reminded that those deposits in our hands are not forever,
Yeah.
that those are limited deposits, and that life
Right.
can be very difficult and harsh. So I said, how about we just open ourselves up to life today, and had everybody put their arms in front of them, like kind of, hands out in front of them.
Yeah.
And I kind of just did a blessing, and
Very good.
everyone was clapping after. And I was like, okay, I'm glad that worked.
Everybody dropped MDA, what is
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
MDA, and the
You
rave
know,
continued.
but it's interesting because, as an artist, person, actor, kind of person myself too. Uh, Creatives, I think, are the ones who are going to help us most
Yeah.
because creatives take the pain and suffering of the world and they
Mm.
make beauty from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the only thing we can do with pain and suffering. And that's why I like entertainment and art, because
Mm.
it's one of the tools that we have in our human toolbox where we take the shit that's thrown at us in life and we make it into a mausoleum. We turn it into a sculpture of beauty. Like
Yeah.
I one of this, I know this one artist who takes like dumpsters, and old trash cans
Oh,
and turns them into aesthetic art pieces. I kind of think
wow.
that's a powerful metaphor for
Yeah.
what we're always doing in life.
Yeah.
And the greatest artists are people who make their life the greatest expression of artwork, not like the things they do. And the greatest thing you'll ever do is show people how to suffer. That's it.
Mhm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's why Jesus, not to get religious, but why is it that the centerpiece of Western civilization is a guy on a cross,
Right.
is a
Yeah.
guy suffering? Why is it that, a third of the planet's like, yeah, I resonate with that. That guy getting
Yeah.
freaking crucified. That's the man. I think it's
Yeah.
because that story for many people, it's like, whoa, suffering is at the center of it, but
Mm.
also a story of overcoming that suffering. And so I think for me, like, you know we're always looking for teachers and tools, and that sometimes those who have the most money or the most fame or most attention have the least resources to deal with these losses, right? they
Yeah.
just they they just don't have the,
Yeah.
because but
I haven't needed them, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right, let's jump into there's going to be people listening who have been in the industry a long time. There might be newbies or people that are thinking
Yeah,
about jumping into some level of whether it's funeral celebrant, death doula, funeral director, hospice chaplain, cremation operator, right? What advice would you give somebody uh, who's wanting to get involved, who's looking at it maybe as a
yeah, I
first
would say
career or even a second career?
yeah, I think one, it's not industry that's not going away. I'm
Sure.
not to be
Yeah.
morbid,
No.
right? It's
True.
it's 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 kind of like death and taxes, right? So it's either become a CPA or a death
Right.
doula or a
Right.
celebrant, right? I mean, because so I would say in the sense that it's it's a reality of life in an industry that needs compassionate, capable people constantly. Okay,
Yeah.
so so that's it. So the first thing I would say is, one, if you feel called to work within kind of end of life care at some level, or death care, or celebrant care, people, you have to care for people, because you're going to be dealing with people in the most vulnerable state of their life. And the
Yeah.
thing that I got to tell you about grief is, grief makes you lack clarity. Grief makes you lack manners at times. Sometimes you have no
Right.
sense of time, and space,
Yeah.
and so you gotta be very, like, as a person, compassionate, and like I, as a hospice counselor, I've been with people as they die, and then there are organizations that come and retrieve the bodies, right? Well, sometimes
Yeah.
the people who retrieve those bodies are just picking up bodies all day. Forgive me for being coarse. They're going from
Right.
one house to the next, and they got a quota, they got an agenda, they got to go for, So
Yeah.
sometimes they show up at the house. There's a grieving woman who just lost her husband, and it's like, hey, we just got to pack them up and go. And
Yeah.
so I always want to tell people, hey, listen, you're gonna have to stretch your ability to be there for people, give people as much time as they need, really
Yeah.
try to over index on human compassion. If you're a funeral director, celebrant, counselor, you're the guy driving people's ashes to the house. If you're picking up
Right.
somebody's remains, if these are it's such sensitive stuff. So that's one thing. Two,
Yeah.
educate yourself on culture, on just
Mm.
different cultures. Like different cultures grieve differently and act differently in the face of loss, and
Mm.
become an expert in that. And
Yeah.
some cultures are very expressive, some are not as much. So just learning like how people are, and having a skill set that's you can move to different cultures and different types of people, because in this industry you're going to be dealing with everybody, the old, the
Right.
young,
Yep.
every religion, every tradition. And I would say maybe one kind of final thought is, yeah, I think you need to have strength to deal with people going through loss constantly. If not, you can get compassion fatigue, or you can get exhausted yourself, because you're kind of giving. So I
Yeah.
would just say, in life, make sure that you're filling your own cup. You're taking
Yeah.
time to be resourced, because it is an industry where emotions are going to be part of the job constantly. And
Yes.
emotions and dealing with people's emotions can be a lot,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and they're dealing with hard things, loss, death. They don't know what
Yeah.
to do. This was not on their agenda. It's like,
Right.
this wasn't my plan. And so
Yeah.
you're having to come in, um, and people like the fact that there's experts in things, so I would say act like an expert, you
Yeah.
know, in the sense like, okay, this is normal. It's okay for you. Like, normalize the experience for people, help them get some tools and some handles on what they're experiencing and feeling, because it's
Yeah.
scary for most people. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah, the things that come up for me that support everything you've just said in is we have to be comfortable with the not being able to fix anybody, right? So we have to be compassionate and
Yeah.
caring, but not codependent, right? Like if we feel like
Yes.
we're going to help somebody feel better all of a sudden, like you said, when they're grieving and their life is upside down, we can come in and hold space and offer care and compassion, and then we leave, and hopefully they've had a good experience. We set them up to have a better day, and yet we're not resolving anything that they've experienced that day, right?
Y-
So that's
Yeah,
a big.
no.
Yeah.
And to attempt to and you're right, Keith, and to attempt to try
Oh,
to, is like, you have to realize, like, everyone's journey is going to be their journey. And just to be very clear, like, not every journey is going to be a pretty journey. Like, some
right.
people are going to lose someone, and then it's going to be real hard for them after that. And some
Yeah.
people, it's going to be, they're prepared for that emotionally or whatever, and they kind of move on. So everyone's different. I think you just want to be able to serve with compassion wherever you're at, but also, not carry that burden, because you're going to be with a lot of people with a lot of burdens.
Yeah. Sometimes nurses and social workers, chaplains as well, say that family members and friends are like, I don't know how you do it. I'd be a mess. Or, nobody else, they don't feel sometimes understood and can feel really alone. How important is it for you to have a few friends or people in your life that kind of get you and get what you do? And what does that look like for you?
I think it's like essential, having other relationships, because I'm an empath, so I feel for people. I feel
Yeah.
deeply, and I
Right.
can carry that. And where there's a resolution to bring, I want to bring one, and
Right.
I can't.
Right.
Right? So I have to um lean on the people who have the skills in this industry to tell me, hey, you did the best job with that was a really hard situation, you did great, Ian, but you can't fix that for that family. Or or
Right.
maybe you can say no to that one, or so yeah, I think having resources and support as you're a giver and a caretaker and a caregiver in your industry, you need that circle of care around you. But also, I mean, you have to be able to kind of like the medical doctor saving a kid, cutting into a child or something, to save their life. You
Right.
kind of have to have the skill to separate yourself a little bit from the suffering of that child to help them,
Right.
and I think that's true for these people. You got to kind of like, if you are so emotionally caught up in every situation that you're entering into, you probably won't be able to be helpful. You got to
Right.
have, some space and be able to be helpful. And if you're in the same emotional spiral and whirlwind they're in, you won't be able to be.
Yeah. When I do celebrations of life, my friends often say, I'll say, "Whoa, that was a hard one." They go, "How did you hold it together?" And I said, "I have to be like you just said this. I have to be the professional in the room. Somebody's got to hold the thing
Yes.
together. And my job at that moment is to hold space and carry it. And there is no option of falling apart. Can I feel it? Yeah, a tear. I might feel a tear, but I have to keep the composure so that I'm holding the space for others to have their experience. Then afterwards, though, man, I may need to, figure out how am I going to decompress? How am I going to, detox? How am I going to wash this through me? How am I going to feel this? What am I going to do with all the emotion that I didn't get to express at the celebration of life because I was the leader, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and there's often, in psychology or counseling chaplaincy school, we talk about transference and counter transference,
Yeah.
right? So transference is when I'm taking my life experiences and I'm putting them on the situation. So the mom who died, it's like, that's my mom, I'm crying. Oh,
Right.
she looks like my mom. And I'm feeling, you
Right.
counter transference is when the family does that to you, and
Uh-huh.
they're kind of psychologically imposing a role on you and wanting you to, so you just
Yeah.
got to be very careful of like, okay, what expectations do they have of me, and what role am I really clearly playing here? But I would say
Yeah.
this, I use discernment, and here's kind of a principle I use: the younger and more tragic the loss, the more open and available I am to the people who are I'm working with. And it's not that I'm not open to the one who has a 91-year-old mom who died on hospice
Sure.
care after 5 years. But, this 31-year-old young lady who died, I'm texting that husband still. I'm
Yeah.
checking in on that family. And
Yeah.
well, why would I do that? Well, I feel like I have a certain set of skills because of my training, education, and experience to help them. But I don't do that for every family. But
Right.
there's opportunities for me to feel like, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna walk with this guy. I'm gonna try to be there for him. But
Yeah.
you got to use discernment, and I think the people who try to do that with everyone, they burn out. They
Right. Yeah. Yeah. One of the great principles in youth ministry was, I think it was Doug Fields that taught me this, the power of referrals, right?
Yeah,
Like they said, you're a youth minister, but you're not a youth counselor, right? So all of a
exactly.
sudden we're not counseling kids. We're referring kids to the right spaces, but we're walking with kids through life. And that's what we get to do with some of these families, some more closely than others. And like you said,
Yep.
when it seems to make sense, and we can be that support that maybe they don't have anywhere else, like this family, the
Yes.
31, so
Yeah. Well, and also in these situations, I find like this situation with this young woman who passed, and there's the failures of the doctors and all these stuff, right? But at the end of the day, the young man is in the loop of WTF, why did this happen? Where, I can't believe this. And he's gonna be in that loop forever, okay?
right.
For a long time, right?
Yeah.
If you're in that loop as well, meaning I don't have an answer to get him out of that loop. I can't go, well, this is why that happened.
Right. Right.
There's no meaning. So you kind of just have to like model a certain way of dealing
Yeah.
with the ambiguity and the fact that we don't have an answer,
Yep.
and that and so if somebody wants an answer from you, why did this happen? Give me the solution. Fix this problem. You are setting yourself up for malpractice. You really just have,
Right.
you
Right.
just have to be like, hey, I'm rolling the journey
Yeah.
with you,
Yeah.
and but listen, man, I'm in this shit storm too, and I got a whole lot of. I always tell people, the people have like, well, do you believe in God? And I say, it depends on the day. for me or whatever. I go, but even if my faith was 100% blah 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 blah, I still have to deal with death. I still have to deal with suffering. I still have to deal. So even if, you know, the people who maybe have the clearest belief systems, the clearest faith systems, it doesn't assuage the suffering and death and difficulty often, I mean,
Yeah,
we're all still dealing. So, we're dealing with kind of a problem where there isn't really a clear answer,
yeah,
and we kind of got to walk through the fog together. And I think that's what's most frustrating for people. But here's the thing: if I have one little flashlight in the fog, maybe that's better than none. And so I just try to be a little bit of a flashlight, and hey, this is maybe some things we can think about, and here's some resources, and here's some things we can kind of talk about, and
yeah,
yeah, and move forward.
yeah. Got time for one last question?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Cemeteries. So I'm part of this other new little business called Grave Angels, and
I
and it's
love it. It's
helping.
great business.
Right. And it's the whole idea is right is helping be able to do clean grave markers and tombstones for families who maybe aren't in the area or can't get to the grave site. But I've been thinking obviously a lot about cemeteries, more so now more than ever, about who goes, who doesn't go, why do we go, why don't we go, do certain cultures go more than others? I had Neil O'Connor on as a guest last week, and he was talking about, sometimes more the Hispanic culture, right? That seems to honor, the what is it? The days, I forget
Yeah,
the
Dad.
the Day of the Dead, right? On Halloween or the
De
day
los
after,
Muertos.
De
Yeah.
los Muertos, right? Have a better understanding maybe of people who've passed on. What are you one to see people or talk with families that go do cemetery visits, and what's your take on that these days? Do people do
Yeah.
it, not do it? Why
Yeah. I'm very
should we?
frequently. Yeah, I'm at a cemetery frequently. I'm so, and for
Yeah,
me, they're actually really special places because
yeah,
they're really one of those only places we stop to sacredly remember those
yeah,
who, we collectively come together. And if in the earliest parts of America, like on the East Coast, cemeteries are just integrated in neighborhoods and stuff. Like
yeah,
we've kind of segmented them.
yeah,
I think we are people, I don't know about the word closure, but I know we need to foster attachments.
yeah,
And that when we lose someone, we need places of memorial. It's why probably the temples in Egypt were built, or why the oracles in Greece had
yeah, right,
their temples. Like
yeah,
we need places to come together and collectively like remember. And that's why they're memorial parks, because we come to memorialize and remember. And
yeah,
I think having a physical space where that person is, and having a marker of their life, a dash from,
yeah,
this is the
yep,
life that they live,
right,
I think is very significant. And I think as a society, I think it's good to have, because when I'm ever there, I walk around, I look at the gravestones and markers,
yeah,
and those were all precious lives, right? Those were all loved and precious
right,
lives. And so I think they play a significant role. I think what you're doing in keeping those fresh and those markers clean and keeping people attached to those memories, I think is significant.
yeah,
So I think cemeteries play a very significant role. I would hate to see us just be a society where people die and disappear, and they're just pictures. We don't have any space collectively where we go and honor the dead and kind of remember. I think that would be kind of a tragic thing, if we just
yeah,
become so distant. So I think having physical spaces, I
yeah.
see families all the time laying flowers, balloons. I went to one the other day. I thought this was cool as a young man. And his favorite cologne was embedded in his gravestone, so you could literally
Wow.
spray, spray, a
Oh
spray
my
of his
God.
cologne when you visited him to smell like him.
Brilliant.
Isn't that
Wow.
cool? Yeah,
That's really cool. That is something. Yeah.
yeah. So they had all these different kind of pieces. And I thought that's kind of crazy. His friends go there and they could leave kind of smelling like the cologne of
Right.
him, and
Well, the power of memory with scent, right?
yeah,
How that's,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Wow.
we I think with AI and the future of technology, we're going to see a lot of stuff happen within the world of grief care and avatars and people's living presence digitally kind of carrying on. I've seen this people having QR codes on grave sites now, where you can like scan the QR code and it takes you to a video of the couple dancing, or a story of their life. And I
Really?
and I think
Wow.
these are pretty amazing things. And I think the West, we're such a pleasure driven society. We'd rather go to Disneyland than a cemetery, but there's a proverb that says it's better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting. And I
Mm,
always wonder, what is that proverb about?
right.
And I think it's
Yeah.
because you're going to find more truth at a graveside than you are going to be at Mickey Mouse's side.
Dude.
You're going to find more truth about the human condition, about yourself, about life, and that's why maybe there's more wisdom at a graveside than there is at a festival, And so, I think cemeteries are essential.
Yeah, that's great. Well, maybe that'll be a song. That feels like that's a song somewhere coming out of that proverb, and whether being at
Yeah,
a house of mourning rather than a house of feasting. So that could be a good lyric in some rap or something you do. So I
yeah,
can't wait
it's
to check
true.
that
Well,
out.
and I get to, like you, Keith, we get to see the best of people
Yeah,
because people are rising to care for one another in the face of loss.
yeah,
And I think it's a beautiful thing to see when it's done
yeah,
right.
for sure. So, for people that might want to get hold of you, you got some handles that you can. How can people find you if they
Yeah.
want to check your stuff out?
Yeah, my Instagram is DAPPR_official, Dapper_official. That's my rapper name and my artist
Okay.
name. My LinkedIn is Dr. Ian DiOrio, and you could just find me on LinkedIn. And those are
From
primarily
Dapper to
the.
Doctor In,
Yeah, that's
dude.
right, Dr. Dapper, Dr. Dapper.
That's awesome. Well, man, I sure appreciate you joining me on this podcast, and it's just such a pleasure to be with you in this way. Hear you articulate so much all the things I love and care about, also, and to hear them come from you just thrills my heart, bro. Glad we're in this together.
Yeah,
Thank you.
same thing, bro. Thank you. Much love, bro.
Okay, to be continued.
Blessings.
Yep.